Discover over 100 episodes of Bartholomewtown on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.
This is the Bartholomewtown Podcast.
To me, just generally, I think we need to have a very positive outlook for our state. There's a lot of negative outlook. You hear a lot of that talk. And for me, Quonset is a testimony of what can be done.
Welcome in to another edition of the Bartholomewtown Podcast. I'm your host, Bill Bartholomew. On today's episode, I sit down with the managing director of Quonset, Stephen King. And Quonset, the former Navy base, now a sprawling business park and commercial port in North Kingstown, Rhode Island, on the heels of a Bryant University report revealing that Quonset is a major driver of job growth and economic development in the state. Great to sit down with Quonset's managing director, Stephen King, not only to talk about his operation, but also how some of the successes from Quonset can be applied on a statewide level. So stick around. From the loft, Stephen King. Okay, it's back now through November 3rd at Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence. It's the Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular 2019 presented by Citizens Bank. This year, you're going to travel through a seasonal wonderland and celebrate the joys of New England. Feast your senses on autumn's beauty, winter's swirling snow, spring's first blossoms, and summer's ocean breezes. It's all intricately carved on thousands of pumpkins displayed along the zoo's wetlands trail. It's the Jack-O-Lantern Spectacular 2019 presented by Citizens Bank, now through November 3rd at Roger Williams Park Zoo in Providence. You can reach me anytime, Bill at ripodcast.com, or follow me on Twitter at Bill Bartholomew. Okay, let's get right to it. Quonset's managing director, Stephen King.
Just last week, we announced the study that Bryant University did for us, as you mentioned, and that reveals that there's some $4.3 billion of economic activity generated by the businesses at Quonset Business Park on an annual basis. Those businesses are generating $128 million of household income for families here in Rhode Island, which is the most important part. And the jobs at Quonset pay nearly some 20% more than the state average. Okay, so close to $60,000 a year is the average salary for folks that work there. So that's really what it's about, providing families an opportunity to have a good paying job and a solid future.
Let's go back to the origins, the Navy, obviously. You think of the Seabees when and really that what was the entire pivot for the region, not just Quonset, the park itself, but you look at some of the businesses, the hotels, the old restaurants on Post Road there. There was a story that was written in that region. Well, there's been several stories going back to the, time before time was recorded. But in modern day, anyway, Quonset existed as a naval hub. Then there was a period for a while that sort of undid itself after the Navy pulled out.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The Quonset Business Park is made up of two former Navy bases. One was the Quonset Naval Air Station, and the other the Naval Construction Battalion Center, the home of the Fighting Seabees. And they both closed at different times, so that leads to a little bit of vacancy, obviously, when 25,000 people leave the Navy service and the civilian service at that location. But the Quonset side closed in 1978, and the Davisville side didn't actually close until 1994 officially. So it takes a lot of time to turn the wheel. It takes, like the Navy to turn an aircraft carrier, it takes a lot of space, right? So the Quonset side was under state control since about 1980, and the Davisville side, since about the year 2000. And both sides are about 50-50 size-wise, so the whole park is 3,212 acres, and it's about equal of the two sides of the park, the north and south, with Quonset being the first. So Electric Boat Corporation, thankfully, under Governor Newell's leadership way back in the day, we were able to garner them to come utilize the naval facilities in 1974 when the base closed. And that's sort of been the anchor of the business park, still is to this day. They are actively growing as we speak. They're investing some $800 million in new facilities in the business park, and they've been ramping up their employment again as they're going to be beginning to build the new Columbia-class submarines to replace the old Ohio-class.
Of the numbers, or the numbers that we saw produced by the Bryant report, how much of that is generated by defense? How much of that comes from, really having ambassadors like Senator Reid and Congressman Langevin pulling funds back in for defense here in Rhode Island.
Right. So EB is really the big chunk of the defense monies there. So EB employs almost 4,500 people of the nearly 12,000 that come to work. So say a third of the business park employment is anchored in defense. The balance of the business park is anchored in various sectors of the economy, whether it's warehousing, distribution, manufacturing, the seaport business at Davisville, et cetera.
So it's a huge chunk then of
no doubt.
of the entire operation.
No doubt.
So today we've got, you can think about there's a wide world of indoor sports there. I mean, is that factored into the Quonset business park? So they're anything like that, Marshalls?
The Kohl's actually.
That's actually Kohl's and Home Goods.
Yeah, so...
Wrong TJX company.
Right. So all those businesses are factored in, of course.
Yeah, okay. Looking at Quonset as a model that can be applied statewide, is that something that you have any conversations with Stefan Pryor or anybody at high levels of kind of making a template out of what you've built at Quonset?
Yeah, so Stefan, as you may know, chairs my board of directors at the QDC. So we've had lots of conversation about the success we've had at Quonset and how we can create a model or a template to apply at other places. Quonset's a very unique thing where, there's a lot of infrastructure that the Navy obviously left behind, and the state has total control of a 3,000 plus acre complex. So we're not going to see similar things statewide of that size and ilk, right? But there is some lessons to be learned from the individual site readiness program that we did. So we worked through, after we had all the property and rebuilt all the infrastructure and subdivided the land into various development parcels, we did a lot of work to pre-permit and entitle those properties for development. So that allows us to take advantage of opportunities when they arise in a very quick manner. And there's some lessons to be learned for that we can apply elsewhere, of course. And there is a small initiative starting out at the Commerce Office to do just that, to help those that may be interested to remove some of the barriers to development and get it pre-ready so that when there is an opportunity, those opportunities can be capitalized on quickly.
So it sort of plays into that idea that, the notion that Bryant Gumbel, government isn't particularly nimble. And in general, so if you already own the full plot of land and you already have full control, now you're not getting into land acquisitions of any kind. Now you're not having to deal with outside players. So it makes that process more streamlined. That's something we don't really have anywhere else unless you're talking about parkland, beachland, or anything like that. I can't picture another site. Maybe the airport is large, but certainly nowhere near the scale as Quonset.
That's right. So privately owned lands, there's opportunities to work with the host communities they're in to remove all those barriers that may lie ahead. And it's always based on a little bit of a chicken egg where you don't know what's going to come. So like in our case, we have particular zoning for the properties, and we know how big and how size-wise, how many parking spaces and truck docks and those things we need. So we could categorize all that and prepare a plan to show a prospect that, okay, you need 100,000 feet. Well, here's 3 or 4 alternatives. We know you fit here. You can start building in 90 days, and we'll give you the property under lease so you can get started right away.
Modernizing government, essentially, in a sense.
Yeah, I mean, regulations, we need regulations to control development, to make sure we're not impacting the environment and those type of things, and protecting the public health, safety, and welfare. But there's a way for us to do a preliminary work, advanced work, as much as we can in advance so that a lot of the questions are pre-answered, right? So we're not starting out with a proposal and then trying to answer all the questions and then finding out, gee, there's a red flag because of issue, X or Y that popped up, right?
Right. Another big aspect of Quonset specifically, of course, is the vehicle imports. That creates large vehicles on the road that may play into tolling, this, that, and the other. Is that a conversation that you have on a statewide level of what's, not necessarily lobbying for there not to be truck tolls,
right?
But as far as like that dialogue, is that something that goes on of building the most hospitable infrastructure, much like we see with sailing, where frankly, it becomes attractive to have your boat here in Newport because of the taxation, for example, things like that.
Of course, the tolls, it's a situation where we need funds to make sure the infrastructure is in a high quality state of repair, right? But if you look backwards a little bit, the state invested with federal help with the congressional delegation to bring funds in to build the Route 403 access highway. We've had multiple projects. We're undergoing a $90 million rehabilitation project right now that's being funded by a general obligation bond from the voters of the state of Rhode Island.
And that was approved in 2012?
16. Yeah.
16, okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
very recent then.
Very recently, right?
I voted on it then. I was back
thank you.
here.
Thank you. So the work's ongoing. But my point is those investments in the infrastructure lead to the opportunity to have the immense shipping traffic that we have. Be remiss if I didn't give a shout out to our operator down there. NORAD is our company that's the auto processing tenant. Do a terrific job. And, we've seen 9 straight years of growth, double-digit growth, year-over-year growth. And this year we're well ahead of last year. Year to date, so things are very, very positive.
So that factors into that number as well, that Bryant, those numbers, but the big number that Bryant has produced, which is that the jobs and the dollars that are being pumped back in.
That's right.
So Quonset, in a nutshell, right now today is something that when we hear the complaints, as we often do about Rhode Island not being able to generate industries of the future or industries of the present, it's actually happening at Quonset today.
It absolutely is. And as I mentioned, we have a broad spectrum of industries. We have nearly 20% of the manufacturing in the state of Rhode Island is located at Quonset. Obviously, EB is a big chunk of that, but we have a host of other companies, whether it's companies like Hexagon Metrology or Haywood Pools or Clark Valve or whoever. There's lots and lots of companies involved in manufacturing efforts as well.
Let's take a look at the facility itself and kind of going into the future. You've got a little roadie down there, right? One of the self-driving cars. Is that there yet? Or
it's actually coming up here in Providence.
It's only here. There isn't one in Quonset yet?
We used Quonset as a test bed when they first came to the
Gotcha.
state to beta test it and so forth, and then it's been up here since, yeah.
Quonset seems ripe for, again, maybe developing a template of when it comes to public transportation, using hub-oriented type systems. Is that something in your plans for the future?
Yeah, it's something we want to see get improved. We just had a meeting with RIPTA yesterday to talk about opportunities. So QDC has been funding an effort to match a federal grant the last couple of years to run what we call the Quonset Express, or the QX bus. That runs 4 times a day to bring folks from the city here in northern Rhode Island down to Quonset to work. So we hope more people will take advantage of that. Those rides are free, and they can get that bus for free for a period of time. And then we're strategizing how we can grow the public transit opportunities. It's interesting because we have really good wages at the park, right? Lots of people can afford to have cars. So it's not a huge problem because most everybody commutes, but it's something that we certainly want to make sure there's opportunities for all spectrum of folks here in the state to work at Quonset.
What's the future look like for Quonset? What are the major areas, industries you're trying to attract, and any major, obviously you're in this bonding project right now, but outcome-wise, 5-10 years from now?
So the future is very bright. We have, outside of the EB growth I mentioned with the $800 million, we have a $100 million meat plant being constructed by Cargill. And they're going to be opening next summer, and they're going to be seeking to employ nearly 800 people to work in that facility.
Meat processing?
Meat, yeah, so packaging and so forth. So their primary customer would be Stop and Shop and Hannaford Food Market, something like that. So if you go to the market to buy a tray of pork chops, what have you, that's typically cut off site and packaged elsewhere. They don't do it in the butcher shop at the store. So that consolidates some of that operation. So they'll be opening up in the middle of next summer, thereabouts. We recently had a company called Taylor Farms purchase an asset that had turned over, and they're opening up again a food processing business where they make salads and prepared sandwiches, etc. They're hiring, as we speak, some 250 people to work in that plant. So right there, it's over 1,000 new jobs to add to the nearly 12,000 already there. So that's very exciting. And we see the full build-out of the business park to yield about 16,700 employees when it's all built out. So,
and most of those industries are kind of processing, manufacturing, things like that.
Yeah, so we welcome all industries. Right. So that's been part of our success. I think we have a very diverse portfolio of companies. So whereas, we could have said we want to be just a biotech park and just had biotech tenants, and then if there's an issue with that sector of the economy, all your eggs in one basket, right? We have a lot of eggs in our defense basket as we started this conversation with ADB. So we welcome a broad spectrum of folks to the business park.
I guess that's kind of where I was getting at too.
Yeah.
Long way back to that question. If that budget's cut, which could very well happen, with bracking and so on and so forth, there could be changes in terms of military spending, availability to fund businesses, and all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out. Not on EB necessarily, maybe to a small extent. We've seen that in the past, but you're nimble enough that you can survive without, obviously maybe not without the entire defense portfolio, but you can take a hit if that happens.
Yeah, I mean, you look back to 2008 when we had in 2009 we had the recession. We only had one company close its doors in the business park in that downturn. So we've been very, very fortunate, and things are going very well. What's your message to Rhode Island leaders that are struggling right now in other areas, maybe education, maybe in human health and human services, other leaders in private public sector right now, how to get their project, whatever it is they oversee, to a place where they're feeling as good as QDC is? So, my expertise is in the development side of the house, so, I'm focused at Quonset. But to me, just generally, I think we need to have a very positive outlook for our state. There's a lot of negative outlook. You hear a lot of that talk. And for me, Quonset is a testimony of what can be done. And when we stick to the plan and we have positive investment and we work hard towards a goal. So that'd be my one message is let's stay positive for sure. Stay positive. Last question. Can we expect any voters? Is there, obviously you can go and read the report. There's infographics available. I'll share those on our Instagram at Bartholomewtown Podcast and on Twitter at Bill Bartholomew. I'm sure you've got it on your website as well. But as far as, the average person, somebody who lives in Ashaway who's just curious about I guess we have a drag race going on in the background here. The average person who may be curious about what's going on at Quonset and if they want to have a voice in how that process goes. I don't know what voice they could have other than just civilian, but how does someone get involved in the process, I guess? So all of our board of directors meetings are public meetings to comply with the Open Meetings Act, et cetera. So those are held every third Tuesday of the month. There's one this evening, matter of fact, and everyone's always welcome to attend. All the information about Quonset is on the website at quonset.com, simple as that. You can find all the information about it there. And I also encourage anyone listening, if they're looking for a job, to check out quonsetjobs.com. We have a pretty strong jobs board where we allow the tenants to post all the openings, and people looking for work can certainly go there. As always, thanks for joining in on the Bartholomewtown Podcast. Hey, I've got a bonus episode for you today. I went on a run with the Run Club over at the Wexford building, the CIC. The brand new building over there on the 195 lane by the pedestrian bridge. That crew joined some Bartholomewtown alums like Ed Fitzpatrick and Rebecca Weber out there on the course. The course being running around downtown Providence. Got some interview content there, and you can hear me out of breath if you'd like a bonus episode of Bartholomewtown for you. Hope you have a great weekend, and back with a brand new episode for you on Tuesday. Talk soon.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.